A pregnant dog refused to leave a graveyard. What this lonely child did changed the town forever. What happened next will shock you to your core. Before we begin, drop a comment below and tell us where you're listening from. We love hearing from our amazing community. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories that will touch your heart. The story you are about to listen to isn't just about a dog and a child. It's about loyalty that defies death itself, and a bond so powerful it changed an entire town forever. But what nobody expected was the truth hidden beneath the surface, a truth that would leave everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and the mysterious ways life connects us all. The fog rolled through Pine Valley like a whisper carrying secrets. It was the kind of evening that made people hurry home, lock their doors, and draw their curtains tight. But in the old cemetery on Maple Street, something waited in the mist that would soon capture the hearts of everyone in town. Mrs. Sarah Chen had been the first to notice her 3 weeks ago. Walking her own small terrier past the iron gates, she'd spotted a shadow lying motionless beside one of the weathered headstones. At first, she thought it was just another piece of debris blown in by the autumn wind. But then the shadow moved, and Sarah realized it was a dog, a beautiful golden retriever with a coat that seemed to glow even in the dim light. "That's strange," Sarah had murmured to herself, tugging her leash to move her own dog along, but something made her pause. The golden retriever wasn't just resting. She was positioned deliberately, her body curved protectively around the base of an old granite stone, her dark eyes fixed on something only she could see. The next morning, Sarah mentioned it to her neighbor, old Tom Morrison, who ran the corner grocery store. Tom stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. "A dog in the cemetery, you say? That's been happening for weeks now. My delivery boy mentioned seeing her there every evening when he passes by on his bike." "Every evening?" Sarah's eyebrows rose. "In this weather?" "Rain or shine," Tom nodded. "Strange thing is, she won't let anyone near. Animal control tried to catch her twice, but she just disappears into the fog. Then she's back the next day, same spot, same stone." Word spread through Pine Valley the way small-town news always does, from the grocery store to the post office, from the church steps to the school pickup line. Soon everyone knew about the mysterious dog who refused to leave the cemetery. Some said she was waiting for her owner to return. Others whispered darker theories about ghosts and supernatural guardians. But nobody could explain why she chose that particular grave, or why she seemed to be growing rounder by the day. The cemetery itself had always been a place of quiet sadness for the people of Pine Valley. It was old, dating back to the 1800s, with crooked headstones and overgrown paths that wound between ancient oak trees. Most families had moved their regular visits to the newer memorial park on the other side of town, leaving this place to the memories and the occasional historian who came to study the weathered inscriptions. But now, evening after evening, people began to slow their cars as they drove past. They'd peer through the iron bars, trying to catch a glimpse of the golden shape that lay so faithfully beside that same weathered stone. Some brought cameras, but the fog always seemed to obscure their shots. Others brought food, leaving small bowls by the gate, though the dog never approached while humans were watching. "It's heartbreaking," whispered Linda Foster to her book club one Thursday evening. "Whatever that poor animal is going through, she's going through it alone." "Dogs don't grieve like that," argued Janet Mills, adjusting her reading glasses. "Not unless something truly terrible happened." "Maybe she's protecting something," suggested quiet Mary Kim, who rarely spoke up during their meetings. "My grandmother always said animals can sense things we can't." The fog seemed to thicken as October deepened, and still the dog remained. Groundskeeper Pete Williams had tried approaching her several times, concerned about the approaching winter and the obvious signs of her pregnancy, but each time he got within 20 feet, she would rise silently and vanish into the mist between the headstones, only to reappear at the same spot once he'd gone. "Never seen anything like it," Pete told his wife over dinner one night. "It's like she's waiting for something specific, or someone." What Pete didn't mention, what he couldn't quite put into words, was the way the dog looked at him. Her eyes held a sadness so deep it made his chest tight. It wasn't the look of a lost or abandoned animal. It was the look of someone who had made a choice and intended to see it through, no matter the cost. The temperature dropped, and the first frost painted the cemetery stones silver in the early morning light. Still, the golden retriever remained, her form now noticeably heavy with the puppies she carried. The townspeople began leaving blankets by the gate along with the food. though they never saw her use them. It was on one of these cold, misty evenings that 5-year-old Milo Peterson first laid eyes on her. Milo was not like other children his age. While his classmates ran and shouted and filled every moment with noise, Milo moved through the world quietly, observing everything with large, serious brown eyes that seemed to hold too much understanding for someone so young. His grandmother, Rose Peterson, often said he was an old soul, born with the kind of gentle wisdom that usually came only after a lifetime of experience. Milo lived with Rose in a small blue house just 4 blocks from the cemetery. His mother, Anna, had died in a car accident when he was 3, and his father had never been part of the picture. Rose, despite being in her 70s, had stepped in without hesitation, wrapping her grandson in all the love she could manage while dealing with her own grief over losing her daughter. Every Tuesday and Friday, Milo and Rose walked to the cemetery to visit Anna's grave. It was a ritual that brought them both comfort. Rose would bring fresh flowers, and Milo would bring drawings he'd made at school, or small stones he'd found that he thought his mother might like. They would sit together on the small bench near Anna's headstone, Rose sharing memories, and Milo listening with the kind of attention that made adults forget he was just a child. On this particular Tuesday evening, the fog hung heavier than usual, muffling sounds and making the familiar path through the cemetery feel like walking through a dream. Rose carried a small bunch of yellow chrysanthemums, Anna's favorite, while Milo held a drawing he'd made of a rainbow after the morning's rain. They had just turned down the narrow path that led to Anna's section when Milo stopped so suddenly that Rose nearly walked into him. "What is it, sweetheart?" Rose asked, following his gaze through the mist. There, about 30 feet away, lay the golden retriever the whole town had been talking about. But this was Milo's first time seeing her, and the sight took his breath away. She was beautiful, even in her obvious sadness, with fur that caught what little light filtered through the fog and made her seem almost ethereal. Her head was rested on her front paws, but her eyes were open, staring at the headstone beside her with an intensity that made Milo's chest feel tight. "That's the dog everyone's been talking about," Rose whispered, "the one who won't leave." But Milo barely heard his grandmother's words. Something was happening to him as he looked at the dog, something he couldn't name but felt in every part of his small body. It was like recognition, but deeper, like remembering something he'd forgotten, or understanding something without being taught. The dog's ears twitched, and slowly she lifted her head to look directly at him. Milo felt his breath catch. Her eyes were the darkest brown he'd ever seen, and they were filled with a sadness so profound it made his own eyes water. But there was something else there too, a spark of something that might have been hope. "She's waiting," Milo whispered, his words so soft that Rose had to lean down to hear him. "Waiting for what, honey?" Milo didn't answer immediately. He was still locked in that strange, silent communication with the dog, feeling something pass between them that he had no words for. Finally, he looked up at his grandmother with those wise brown eyes that always startled adults with their depth. "She's waiting for someone to understand." Rose felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold evening air. There was something in her grandson's voice, something in the way he looked at that dog, that made her think of all the stories her own grandmother had told her about children who could see things adults couldn't, who understood things the grown-up world had forgotten. The dog hadn't moved, but her tail gave the smallest twitch, barely visible, but Milo saw it. He took a step toward her, and Rose's hand instinctively reached out to stop him. "Milo, we don't know if she's safe." "She won't hurt me," Milo said with the kind of certainty that left no room for argument. "She's too sad to hurt anyone." And before Rose could stop him, before she could even process what was happening, Milo was walking slowly toward the dog, his small figure moving through the fog like something out of a fairy tale. The dog watched him approach without moving, without even seeming to breathe. Other people had tried to get close to her over the past weeks, and she had always retreated. But something about this small boy was different. Something about the way he moved, the way he looked at her, the way he seemed to understand that her sadness was sacred and not to be rushed or dismissed. Milo stopped about 10 feet away and simply stood there, his drawing still clutched in his small hand. He didn't call to her or try to coax her forward. He just waited, giving her the choice, respecting her space in a way that made Rose's eyes fill with tears. "Hi," Milo said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Milo. I come here to visit my mom too." The dog's ears perked up slightly at the word mom, and she tilted her head in a way that seemed almost human in its curiosity. "She's over there," Milo continued, pointing vaguely toward Anna's section of the cemetery. "She died when I was little. I miss her a lot." He paused, studying the dog's face with that intense attention he gave to everything important. "Are you missing someone too?" Rose watched in amazement as the dog's tail gave another small twitch, and her head lowered slightly in what looked remarkably like a nod. "I thought so," Milo said, and there was something in his voice, a combination of sadness and understanding that made Rose's heart break all over again for everything her grandson had already experienced in his short life. It's hard, isn't it? Missing someone. The dog made a small sound, barely audible, somewhere between a whine and a sigh. It was the first sound anyone had heard her make since she'd appeared in the cemetery. Milo took one more step forward, moving slowly and carefully. The dog tensed slightly, but didn't retreat. Instead, she seemed to be studying him with the same intensity with which he was studying her. "I think you're going to have babies," Milo observed, his child's directness cutting through any pretense. "Are you scared?" Another small sound from the dog, and this time Rose was certain she saw tears gathering in those dark brown eyes. "My grandma Rose takes care of me now," Milo continued, his voice gentle and reassuring. "She makes really good soup, and she reads me stories, and she never gets mad when I cry about my mom. Maybe whoever you're waiting for would want someone to take care of you, too, while you wait." The fog swirled around them, making the whole scene feel suspended in time. Rose stood frozen, watching her grandson work some kind of magic she didn't understand, but recognized as something profound. This wasn't just a child talking to a stray dog. This was two souls recognizing each other's pain and offering each other the only thing they had to give: understanding. "What's your name?" Milo asked, and when the dog didn't respond, he smiled sadly. "That's okay. Sometimes when people are really sad, they forget things. Would it be okay if I called you Luna? That means moon, and you're kinda golden like the moon sometimes is." The dog, Luna, lifted her head fully for the first time since Milo had approached. She looked at him for a long moment, and then, to Rose's complete amazement, she slowly stood up and took a single step toward the little boy. Milo didn't move toward her. Instead, he slowly lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the damp ground, making himself smaller and less threatening. "You don't have to come closer if you don't want to," he said. "I can just sit here with you for a while. Sometimes it's nice not to be alone, even when you're sad." And that's exactly what he did. Rose watched, her heart hammering in her chest, as her 5-year-old grandson simply sat in the cemetery fog with a strange dog, not trying to pet her or coax her or change anything about the situation. He just offered his presence, his understanding, his quiet acceptance of her grief. Luna stood there for several minutes, clearly torn between her instinct to maintain distance and something about this small boy that called to her. Finally, so slowly that Rose almost didn't see it happening, she lowered herself back to the ground, but this time she was facing Milo instead of the headstone. "That's better," Milo said softly. "Now we can keep each other company while we're sad." The two of them sat there in the gathering darkness, the little boy and the pregnant dog, surrounded by fog and the quiet presence of memories. Rose found herself crying, without quite knowing why, moved by something she couldn't name but felt deeply in her bones. When they finally left the cemetery that night, after Milo had very quietly said goodbye to Luna and promised to come back soon, Rose couldn't stop thinking about what she'd witnessed. There had been something almost otherworldly about the connection between her grandson and that dog, something that went beyond the ordinary bonds between humans and animals. "Grandma Rose," Milo said as they walked home through the quiet streets, "do you think animals can love someone so much that they can't let go, even when that person goes to heaven?" Rose stopped walking and looked down at her grandson, seeing in his young face an understanding that both amazed and worried her. "I think," she said carefully, "that love is the strongest force in the world, and sometimes it's so strong that it doesn't know how to stop, even when it probably should." Milo nodded seriously. "Luna loves someone like that. I could feel it when I looked at her. It's like her heart is stuck." "And what do you think happens to hearts that get stuck?" Rose asked, curious about what wisdom her grandson might offer. Milo thought about this for several blocks before answering. "I think they need someone to help them remember that love doesn't have to hurt all the time, that it can be happy too, even when you're missing someone." Rose felt her breath catch. Sometimes she forgot that grief could teach children things that adults spent lifetimes trying to learn. And do you think you might be able to help Luna remember that? Maybe, Milo said quietly, if she wants me to. But I think she has to decide that for herself. You can't make someone stop being sad if they're not ready. That night, after Milo was asleep, Rose sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, thinking about everything that had happened. She'd lived in Pine Valley her entire life, had seen strange things and unexplainable connections, but nothing quite like what she'd witnessed in the cemetery. There was something about that dog, something about the way she'd responded to Milo that felt like more than coincidence. She found herself wondering about the headstone Luna guarded so faithfully. In all the town gossip about the mysterious dog, no one had mentioned whose grave it was. Tomorrow, Rose decided, she would make some inquiries. If Milo was going to continue visiting Luna, and something told her he would, regardless of what she said, then Rose wanted to understand exactly what they were walking into. But as she finally headed to bed, Rose couldn't shake the feeling that understanding might be more complicated than she expected. There were forces at work here that went beyond a simple case of a lost dog, and her grandson seemed to be at the center of it all. In his small bedroom, Milo lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind full of dark brown eyes and golden fur, and a sadness so deep it felt like drowning. But underneath the sadness, he'd sensed something else in Luna, a fierce protective love that reminded him of his own feelings for his mother's memory. Tomorrow, he decided, he would bring Luna something to eat. And maybe, if she'd let him, he would sit with her again and help her remember that even broken hearts could learn to hope. What neither Milo nor Rose could have known was that Luna's vigil in the cemetery was about to reveal secrets that would shake the very foundations of their quiet town, and that the connection between a lonely child and a grieving dog was only the beginning of a story that would change everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and the mysterious ways that fate brings souls together. The fog rolled on through Pine Valley, carrying with it the promise of revelations yet to come. 3 days later, Milo kept his promise. He slipped out of the house while Rose was busy in her garden, a small paper bag clutched in his hand, containing half of his peanut butter sandwich and a few crackers he'd saved from lunch. The afternoon sun was trying to break through the autumn clouds, but the cemetery still felt wrapped in its perpetual shroud of mist and shadows. Luna was exactly where he'd expected to find her, curled beside the same weathered headstone. But today, something was different. She lifted her head the moment Milo appeared on the path, her ears perked forward in what looked almost like anticipation. Her tail gave a tentative wag, the first sign of anything resembling happiness that anyone in Pine Valley had witnessed from her. "Hi, Luna," Milo said softly, settling into the same cross-legged position he had taken 3 days before. "I brought you something to eat. Grandma Rose always says food tastes better when someone makes it with love." He opened the paper bag and carefully placed the sandwich half on the ground between them, then scattered the crackers nearby. Luna watched every movement with intense focus, but she didn't approach the food immediately. Instead, she seemed to be studying Milo's face, as if trying to decide whether she could trust this small human who spoke to her with such gentleness. "You don't have to eat it if you don't want to," Milo continued, his voice carrying the same patient understanding that had marked their first meeting. "But you're going to have babies soon, and babies need their mama to be strong." At the word babies, Luna's ears twitched, and she glanced down at her swollen belly. For the first time since Milo had met her, her expression seemed to shift from pure grief to something more complex, a mixture of sadness, fear, and perhaps a hint of maternal concern. "Are you scared about having them?" Milo asked, displaying the kind of emotional directness that only children possess. "When my mom was going to have me, Grandma Rose said she was scared too. But she said being scared just means you love something so much you want to protect it." Luna made that same soft sound she'd made during their first encounter, part whine, part sigh, and slowly, carefully, she stretched her neck forward to sniff at the sandwich. The simple act of investigating the food seemed to require enormous courage from her, as if accepting help meant betraying some invisible oath she'd made. Milo watched patiently as Luna finally took a small, tentative bite of the sandwich. Her eyes closed briefly, and her tail gave another small wag. It occurred to him that she might not have eaten properly in weeks, surviving only on whatever scraps people left by the cemetery gates. "There's more where that came from," Milo said encouragingly. "Grandma Rose makes the best sandwiches in the whole world. She puts extra peanut butter on them, and sometimes she cuts them into fun shapes with cookie cutters." As Luna slowly finished the food, Milo found himself studying the headstone she guarded so faithfully. The granite was old and weathered, the inscription worn smooth by decades of rain and wind, but he could just make out a name carved into the stone, Marcus Chen. Below that, dates that showed the man had lived only 34 years before dying sometime in the previous winter. "Is Marcus the person you're waiting for?" Milo asked gently. Luna's head snapped up at the name, her whole body going rigid with attention. Her dark eyes filled with a pain so intense that Milo felt his own chest tighten in response. "He was special to you, wasn't he?" Milo continued, his child's intuition guiding him through emotional territory that would have challenged most adults. "Did he take care of you?" Luna's response was immediate and heartbreaking. She pressed her body against the headstone, whimpering softly, her tail tucked beneath her. But then she did something unexpected. She looked directly at Milo and made a sound that was almost like speech, a low, mournful vocalization that seemed to carry all the weight of her grief. "Oh, Luna," Milo whispered, feeling tears spring to his eyes. "You loved him so much." What happened next would stay with Milo for the rest of his life. Luna rose slowly to her feet and, for the first time since anyone had seen her in the cemetery, she walked away from Marcus Chen's grave. But she didn't flee into the fog as she had with other humans. Instead, she walked the few steps to where Milo sat and gently, carefully, placed her golden head on his small lap. The trust implicit in that gesture was staggering. This dog who had rejected all human contact for weeks, who had disappeared like smoke whenever anyone approached, was now allowing a 5-year-old boy to comfort her. Milo felt the weight of that trust settle around his shoulders like a sacred responsibility. "It's okay," he whispered, carefully stroking Luna's soft fur. "It's okay to be sad. Sometimes being sad is just love with nowhere to go." Luna pressed closer to him, and Milo could feel her body shaking, not with cold, but with the kind of deep, bone-deep grief that comes from losing the center of your world. Her pregnant belly pressed against his legs, and he thought about the puppies growing inside her, innocent lives that would enter the world surrounded by their mother's overwhelming sorrow. They sat together like that for nearly an hour, the small boy and the grieving dog, sharing a communion of loss that transcended species. Milo told Luna about his mother, how she used to sing him to sleep, how she made pancakes shaped like animals on Sunday mornings, how she smelled like lavender and sunshine. And somehow, in the mysterious way that deep connections form, he sensed Luna telling him about Marcus in return. Through her body language, her soft whimpers, her occasional gentle nuzzling, Luna seemed to share fragments of her story. A man who had been kind when the world was cruel. Someone who had shared his food when he barely had enough for himself. Hands that had been gentle, a voice that had been patient, a presence that had made her feel safe in an unsafe world. "He was homeless, wasn't he?" Milo asked suddenly, the understanding hitting him with startling clarity. "That's why you won't leave. He didn't have anyone else, so you were his family. And now you don't know how to stop being his family, even though he's gone." Luna lifted her head from his lap and looked at him with such intensity that Milo felt like she was looking directly into his soul. Her eyes seemed to say, "Yes, you understand. Finally, someone understands." But their peaceful moment was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps and angry voices. Milo looked up to see 3 adults walking quickly down the cemetery path. Mr. Henderson from the town council, Officer Martinez from the police department, and Dr. Williams, the local veterinarian. "There he is," Mr. Henderson was saying, his voice sharp with irritation. "I told you that Peterson boy has been coming here alone. It's not safe." Luna immediately tensed at the sound of the strange voices. Her body went rigid, and she began to rise from her position beside Milo, her instinct to flee warring with her newfound connection to the boy. "Stay," Milo whispered urgently, his small hand gently touching her back. "Please don't go. They won't hurt you if I'm here." But Luna's trust only extended so far. The approaching adults represented everything she'd learned to fear: authority, interference, the threat of being separated from the only place where she felt close to Marcus. She pressed her nose briefly against Milo's cheek in what felt like a goodbye, then began backing toward the fog-shrouded area between the headstones. "Milo Peterson, what do you think you're doing?" Officer Martinez called out as the 3 men reached the boy. "You can't be here alone with that animal. She could be dangerous." "She's not dangerous," Milo said, rising to his feet, but keeping his voice calm and respectful. "She's just sad. Her friend Marcus died, and she doesn't know what to do without him." Dr. Williams stepped forward, his professional concern evident. "Son, that dog has been living wild for weeks. She could be carrying diseases, and she's obviously pregnant and possibly unstable. You need to stay away from her." "But she's not unstable," Milo protested, his young voice carrying a conviction that made all three adults pause. "She's grieving. There's a difference." Mr. Henderson frowned impatiently. "Grieving or not, she's become a public nuisance. People are complaining, and we can't have wild animals taking up residence in our cemetery. Dr. Williams is here to tranquilize her so we can relocate her to a proper facility." The word tranquilize seemed to electrify Luna. Even from her hiding place among the headstones, she let out a low, warning growl, the first truly threatening sound anyone had heard from her. But Milo recognized it not as aggression, but as desperation. "You can't take her away," Milo said, and there was something in his voice that made the three adults step back slightly. "She has to stay here. She's waiting for something important." "What could she possibly be waiting for?" Dr. Williams asked, his tone gentler than the others, but still skeptical. Milo looked toward the fog where Luna had disappeared, then back at the three men. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I know it's important, and I know you can't solve sadness by moving it somewhere else." Officer Martinez knelt down to Milo's eye level, his expression softening slightly. "Look, kiddo, I understand you want to help the dog, but she's not your responsibility. There are people trained to handle situations like this." "What kind of situations?" Milo asked, his brown eyes serious. "Situations where someone loves somebody so much they can't let go? Because I don't think there are people trained for that. I think there are just people who understand it and people who don't." The simple profundity of the statement left all three adults momentarily speechless. Dr. Williams recovered first, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Be that as it may, we have a job to do. The dog needs medical attention, and she needs to be removed from public property." "What if she wasn't on public property?" Milo asked suddenly. "What if someone adopted her? Then she could stay close to Marcus and still get help." Mr. Henderson shook his head firmly. "Son, that dog is clearly traumatized and pregnant with an unknown number of puppies. Nobody in town is equipped to handle that kind of responsibility." "My grandma Rose could do it," Milo said with quiet confidence. "She took care of me when I didn't have anybody else. She's really good at helping sad things feel better." The three men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this level of determination from a 5-year-old. Before any of them could respond, however, another voice joined the conversation. "What exactly is going on here?" Everyone turned to see Rose Peterson walking briskly down the cemetery path, her silver hair catching the late afternoon light, and her blue eyes flashing with protective concern. She'd discovered Milo's absence and immediately known where to find him. "Mrs. Peterson," Officer Martinez said respectfully, "we were just explaining to your grandson that he can't continue visiting this stray dog. It's not safe." Rose looked from the three officials to her grandson, taking in the situation with the quick assessment of someone who had spent decades navigating small-town politics and human nature. "And what makes you think the dog is dangerous?" "She's been living wild, she's pregnant, and she's shown aggressive behavior when approached," Dr. Williams explained. "Standard protocol requires that we remove her from the premises." "I see," Rose said calmly. "And has she actually harmed anyone? Has she shown aggression toward children specifically?" The three men had to admit that she hadn't. "Then perhaps," Rose continued, "we're dealing with an animal who's frightened and grieving, rather than one who's dangerous. Milo, show me where she is." Milo led his grandmother to the area where Luna had retreated, and Rose was amazed to see the golden retriever emerge from the fog almost immediately upon seeing the boy. Luna approached cautiously, but she approached nonetheless, something she had done for no other adult. "Hello, beautiful girl," Rose said softly, crouching down to make herself less threatening. "You've been having a hard time, haven't you?" Luna stopped just out of arm's reach, but her tail gave a tentative wag. More importantly, she didn't retreat. Rose turned back to the three officials. "Gentlemen, I've lived in Pine Valley for 73 years. I've seen a lot of animals and a lot of grief. This dog isn't dangerous. She's devoted. And devotion, even misplaced devotion, isn't something you cure with tranquilizer darts and relocation." Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Henderson began, but Rose held up a hand to stop him. I propose a compromise, she said firmly. Give me 2 weeks. Let me work with this dog, gain her trust, provide her with proper food and medical care. If she proves to be dangerous or unmanageable, then you can proceed with your removal plan. But if she responds to care and kindness, then we discuss a more permanent solution. Dr. Williams looked skeptical. Ma'am, she's about to give birth. Pregnancy can make animals unpredictable, and we don't know her medical history. Then help me provide her with medical care, Rose countered, but do it here, where she feels safe, rather than traumatizing her further with capture and confinement. The debate continued for several more minutes, but Rose Peterson had not raised a daughter and a grandson by backing down from challenges. Eventually, worn down by her persistence and Milo's unwavering determination, the 3 officials agreed to a modified version of her proposal. Dr. Williams would provide medical supplies and guidance for Luna's care, but Rose would be responsible for implementing it. Officer Martinez would check in regularly to ensure public safety, but he wouldn't attempt to remove Luna unless she showed actual aggression. And Mr. Henderson would give them 1 week, not 2, to show significant progress. After the adults left, Rose and Milo sat together near Marcus Chen's grave, waiting for Luna to emerge from her hiding place. The dog appeared eventually, moving with the cautious hope of someone who had overheard the conversation and understood that something had changed. Luna, Milo said gently, this is my Grandma Rose. She's the one I told you about, who makes the good sandwiches. She wants to help you. Luna approached slowly, studying Rose with the same intense scrutiny she'd initially given Milo. But there was something in the older woman's face, a combination of understanding and strength, that seemed to reassure her. I know about loss, Rose said quietly, as Luna finally came close enough to sniff her outstretched hand. I lost my daughter, Milo's mother, 2 years ago, and I know how it feels to want to hold on to someone so tightly that you forget how to let yourself live. Luna's ears drooped at Rose's words, and she made that soft, mournful sound that had become her signature expression of grief. But I also know, Rose continued, that the people we love don't want us to stop living because they're gone. They want us to carry their love forward, to let it help other people, to let it grow into something beautiful. As if to punctuate her words, Luna's belly gave a visible movement as one of the puppies shifted inside her. Rose smiled gently. Those babies you're carrying, they're going to need a mother who remembers how to hope. Marcus would want that for them, wouldn't he? Luna looked down at her belly, then back up at Rose, and for the first time since anyone had seen her, her tail wagged with something that looked almost like joy. That evening, Rose made 2 phone calls. The first was to her friend Margaret Chen, who worked at the Historical Society. The second was to Dr. Williams, asking for specific information about canine pregnancy and birth. By the time she hung up the phone, Rose had a much clearer picture of what they were dealing with. Marcus Chen had indeed been homeless, a veteran who had struggled with mental illness and addiction after returning from overseas. He'd lived rough for several years, often sleeping in the cemetery during warm weather because it was quiet and safe from harassment. Margaret remembered him as a gentle soul who caused no trouble and sometimes helped with minor maintenance around the cemetery in exchange for being left alone. He had died during the previous winter's worst storm, found frozen beside a headstone during a morning when the temperature had dropped to record lows. What Margaret hadn't known, what no one had known, was that Marcus had a dog. Luna had apparently survived the winter alone, staying close to the place where her human had died, waiting for him to return. She's been there for almost 9 months, Rose told Milo as she tucked him into bed that night. 9 months of waiting, through winter and spring and summer, and now into fall again. That's not just loyalty, that's love beyond anything most humans could manage. And now she's going to have babies, Milo said thoughtfully. Do you think Marcus would be happy about that? Rose considered the question seriously. I think Marcus would want those puppies to have the kind of life he couldn't give Luna, a life with warmth and safety and people who understand how precious love is. Are we going to be those people? Milo asked. Rose looked at her grandson, this wise, gentle boy who seemed to attract wounded souls like a magnet, and felt her heart make a decision that her practical mind was still catching up to. I think we already are, she said. But even as she spoke those words, Rose couldn't shake the feeling that Luna's story was more complicated than anyone realized. There were pieces missing from the puzzle, connections that hadn't been made, truths that were still waiting to be uncovered. Tomorrow, she decided, she would dig deeper into Marcus Chen's story. Because if she was going to help Luna heal, she needed to understand exactly what the dog was holding on to, and why letting go seemed impossible. The fog rolled through Pine Valley that night, carrying with it secrets that were finally ready to be revealed. And in the cemetery, Luna lay beside Marcus's grave with her head resting on her paws, her belly full of puppies, and her heart, for the first time in months, holding just the tiniest flicker of something that might eventually become hope. But what Rose and Milo didn't know, what no one in Pine Valley suspected, was that Luna's vigil was about to uncover a connection that would change everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and the mysterious ways that broken hearts can find each other across impossible distances. Comment below if you think Luna will finally find peace, or if there's something even deeper driving her desperate vigil in that cemetery. The next morning brought the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel sharper, more vivid. Rose woke before dawn with a sense of urgency she couldn't quite explain, as if something important was about to happen. She made her way to the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee, her mind already working through the questions that had kept her awake most of the night. While the coffee brewed, she pulled out the small notebook where she kept important phone numbers and addresses. Margaret Chen at the Historical Society had given her a good start on Marcus's story, but Rose suspected there were more pieces to uncover. If she was going to help Luna heal, she needed to understand the full depth of what the dog was grieving. Her first call was to Father Miguel at St. Catherine's, the small Catholic church that ran a soup kitchen for the homeless community. If Marcus had lived rough in Pine Valley for several years, someone at the church would remember him. Marcus Chen? Father Miguel's voice carried immediate recognition when Rose described the man. Oh yes, I remember Marcus well. Sweet soul, very gentle. He used to help us set up chairs for evening meals, never asked for anything extra in return. Had a beautiful golden dog with him most of the time. Rose felt her pulse quicken. Can you tell me more about the dog? Luna, he called her, Father Miguel continued, and Rose had to sit down hard in her kitchen chair. Milo had somehow known the dog's real name. She was devoted to him, never left his side. Marcus said she'd found him during his worst time, when he was thinking about, well, when things were very dark for him. He credited her with saving his life. What happened to her when Marcus died? Rose asked, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. That's the heartbreaking part, Father Miguel said sadly. Animal control couldn't catch her. She just vanished after the funeral, what little funeral we could manage for him. We all assumed she'd found another family or, well, we tried not to think about the alternatives. After hanging up with Father Miguel, Rose sat staring at her coffee cup, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place in ways that made her chest tight with emotion. Luna hadn't just been Marcus's dog. She'd been his lifeline, his reason for staying alive during his darkest moments. And when he died, she'd returned to the last place they'd been together, unable to understand why he wasn't coming back. But there was something else nagging at Rose, something about the way Milo had connected so immediately with Luna, the way he'd known her name without being told. Her grandson had always been unusually perceptive, but this felt like something deeper. Rose was still lost in thought when Milo appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed and holding his small backpack. Are we going to see Luna this morning? He asked, his brown eyes bright with anticipation. Yes, sweetheart, Rose said, studying her grandson's face. But first, I need to ask you something. Yesterday, when you called the dog Luna, how did you know that was her name? Milo tilted his head thoughtfully, the way he always did when trying to put complex feelings into words. I didn't know it was her real name, he said finally. It felt right. Like when you meet someone and their name fits them perfectly, and you feel connected to her, special connected. Milo nodded seriously. It's like she's been waiting for me specifically, not just any person, me. Does that sound weird? Rose reached out and smoothed his dark hair, her heart aching with a mixture of love and worry. No, sweetheart, it doesn't sound weird at all. Sometimes souls recognize each other in ways we don't understand. They walked to the cemetery together, carrying a thermos of warm broth and some dog biscuits that Rose had picked up from the pet store the night before. The morning fog was lighter than usual, and they could see Luna long before they reached Marcus's grave. She was standing this time, rather than lying down, her golden form silhouetted against the gray granite of the headstone. But something about her posture was different, more alert, more expectant. When she saw Milo approaching, her tail began wagging with an enthusiasm no one in Pine Valley had witnessed from her before. "Good morning, Luna," Milo called softly as they drew near. "We brought you breakfast." Luna trotted toward them, moving with more energy than she'd shown since her arrival in the cemetery. She went directly to Milo, pressing her head against his chest in a greeting that was both affectionate and urgent. "She seems different today," Rose observed, settling onto the small portable stool she'd brought, more hopeful. "She had dreams," Milo said with the matter-of-fact certainty that still startled adults. Happy dreams about Marcus, and sad dreams about being alone, and confused dreams about the babies. She's starting to remember that not all feelings have to be sad ones. Rose watched her grandson interact with Luna, noting the easy communication between them that went far beyond normal human-animal bonds. There was something almost telepathic about the way Milo seemed to understand Luna's needs and emotions, the way she responded to his presence like he was a long-lost family member. While Luna gratefully consumed the warm broth, Rose found herself studying Marcus Chen's headstone more carefully than she had the day before. The inscription was simple: Marcus Chen, beloved son and friend, 1989 to 24. But at the bottom, in smaller letters that had been nearly worn away by weather, she could just make out additional words. He loved deeply and was loved in return. "Milo," Rose said carefully, "do you know who wrote that inscription? The part about loving deeply?" Milo looked at the headstone, then at Luna, then back at his grandmother. "Father Miguel did. He told me while Luna was eating. Well, he didn't tell me with words, but I could feel him saying it." Rose felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October morning. Her grandson was describing experiences that bordered on the supernatural, yet he spoke about them as casually as he might discuss the weather. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "when you say you can feel people saying things, what does that mean exactly?" Milo considered this, stroking Luna's head while he thought. "It's like when you're really, really sad about Mom, and I can feel your sadness even when you're trying to hide it. But with Luna, and with Father Miguel yesterday, and with Marcus, it's like their feelings are so strong they become like words in my head." "And what is Marcus saying?" Rose asked, though she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to know the answer. "He's worried about Luna," Milo replied immediately. "He wants her to be okay, but he's scared she'll never forgive herself for not being able to save him. And he's excited about the babies, but sad that he won't be there to help take care of them." Rose felt tears spring to her eyes. Whether Milo was genuinely communicating with the spirit of a dead man, or simply processing grief through his remarkable empathy, the emotions he was describing felt absolutely real. "Is there anything else Marcus wants Luna to know?" Rose asked. Milo was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting on Luna's swollen side where the puppies moved restlessly. "He wants her to know that love doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes shape. And he wants her to let us help her, because helping her is a way for love to keep growing." As if understanding every word, Luna looked up at Milo with eyes that were no longer filled only with grief. There was something else there now, a tentative willingness to believe that hope might be possible. The peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of Rose's cell phone ringing. She glanced at the caller ID and saw Dr. Williams's name. "Mrs. Peterson," the veterinarian said when she answered, "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I'm concerned about the timing. Pregnant dogs usually seek out a den site before labor begins, but this dog is staying in an open cemetery. That's not normal behavior, and it could be dangerous for both her and the puppies." Rose looked at Luna, who had moved closer to Marcus's headstone, as if seeking comfort from its familiar presence. "What are you suggesting, Dr. Williams?" "I think we need to encourage her to relocate before she goes into labor. I've set up a temporary shelter behind the veterinary clinic. Quiet, secure, with proper heating and medical supplies nearby. If you can get her to trust you enough to follow you there, we might be able to provide a safer birthing environment." "And if she won't come?" Rose asked, though she suspected she already knew Luna's answer to that proposal. "Then we may have to sedate her and move her anyway. I know that's not ideal, but the safety of the mother and puppies has to take priority." After Dr. Williams hung up, Rose explained the situation to Milo. His reaction was immediate and fierce. "She won't leave Marcus," he said with absolute certainty. "Not unless—" He trailed off, his eyes widening as if he'd just realized something important. "Unless what, sweetheart?" "Unless Marcus tells her it's okay," Milo said. "But I don't think he can do that from where he is. I think he needs help." "What kind of help?" Milo looked around the cemetery, his gaze settling on the older section where the headstones were more elaborate and the trees grew thicker. "There are other people here who understand about staying when you should go. Maybe they know how to help someone say goodbye." Rose followed his gaze and felt another chill. The old section of the cemetery was where Pine Valley's founding families were buried, dating back to the 1800s. Local folklore claimed it was the most haunted part of the cemetery, though Rose had always dismissed such stories as small-town superstition. But watching her grandson speak with such confidence about communicating with the dead, she found herself reconsidering what she thought she knew about the boundaries between the living and the departed. "Are you saying you want to go over there?" Rose asked. "I think we have to," Milo replied. "Luna's babies might come soon, and if she has them here in the cold, they might not survive. But she won't leave Marcus unless she knows he'll be okay without her. And I think the old spirits know how to help with that." Against every rational instinct she possessed, Rose found herself nodding. "Then let's go ask them." They walked slowly toward the older section of Pine Valley Cemetery, Luna following closely behind them. The dog seemed to understand that something significant was happening. Her ears pricked forward and her tail carried high with nervous energy. The old section felt different from the rest of the cemetery. The air was thicker here, heavy with more than just fog. The headstones were elaborate Victorian monuments, many featuring carved angels and intricate religious symbols. Ancient oak trees created a canopy overhead that filtered the morning light into dappled patterns on the ground. Milo stopped in front of a particularly impressive monument, a tall obelisk surrounded by smaller headstones, marking the graves of the Thornfield family, prominent citizens who had helped establish Pine Valley in the 1860s. "Here," he said simply, settling cross-legged on the grass in front of the monument. Luna immediately joined him, pressing close to his side. Rose sat on a nearby bench, feeling foolish but unwilling to leave her grandson alone in what was either a remarkable display of childhood imagination or something far more profound. "Hello," Milo said softly, addressing the empty air around the Thornfield monument. "My name is Milo, and this is Luna. We need help with something really important." Rose watched in amazement as Luna's behavior began to change. The dog's ears perked up as if she were hearing sounds that Rose couldn't detect. Her head turned back and forth, following something moving through the air around them. "Luna's friend Marcus died," Milo continued, "and she can't figure out how to say goodbye. She thinks if she leaves his grave, she'll forget him, or he'll think she didn't love him enough. But she's going to have babies, and they need somewhere safe to be born." The air around them seemed to grow even thicker, and Rose could have sworn she felt a presence settling around the small group. Luna whimpered softly, but it wasn't a sound of distress. It was the kind of sound a dog makes when greeting a beloved friend. "Marcus is here," Milo announced, though Rose saw no one. The old spirits brought him so he could talk to Luna himself. What happened next would be burned into Rose's memory forever. Luna rose to her feet and began behaving as if someone were standing directly in front of her. Her tail wagged frantically, and she danced in the particular way dogs do when their favorite person comes home. She reached up as if to put her paws on someone's chest, licked at empty air as if kissing a face, and made soft whining sounds of pure joy. "He's telling her how proud he is of her," Milo narrated, tears streaming down his face. "How she was the best friend he ever had, how she saved his life just by loving him. He's telling her that the babies are a gift, and that taking care of them is a way to keep their love alive." Luna spun in circles, barking once, a sound of pure happiness that echoed through the cemetery like church bells. Then she sat down and placed her paw on Milo's knee, looking at him with eyes that were completely transformed. "She understands now," Milo whispered. "She knows that love doesn't end when someone dies, and that the best way to honor Marcus is to let herself be happy again. The babies need a mama who remembers how to hope." The thick feeling in the air began to dissipate, and Luna walked back toward the newer section of the cemetery. But instead of heading for Marcus's grave, she stopped halfway and looked back at Milo and Rose, her tail wagging expectantly. "I think she's ready to see Dr. Williams's shelter," Rose said, hardly believing what she was saying. They walked slowly out of the cemetery, Luna staying close to Milo's side, but no longer looking back toward Marcus's grave with desperate longing. When they reached Dr. Williams's clinic, the veterinarian was waiting for them with barely concealed amazement. "I can't believe she came willingly," he said as Luna allowed him to examine her without resistance. "Her vital signs are good, and I'd estimate she's got less than 48 hours before labor begins. We got her here just in time." But even as Dr. Williams prepared the birthing area and discussed care plans with Rose, none of them could forget what they had witnessed in the cemetery. Rose kept glancing at her grandson, wondering what other impossible things he might be capable of. Luna seemed completely at peace for the first time since anyone had seen her, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. That evening, as Luna settled into her new temporary home with obvious relief, Rose sat in her kitchen trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She'd lived a long life filled with both wonder and tragedy, but nothing had prepared her for a grandson who seemed to communicate with the dead, or a dog whose grief had been healed by a supernatural intervention. She was still lost in thought when Milo appeared beside her chair, ready for bed, but clearly wanting to talk. "Grandma Rose," he said carefully, "do you think I'm weird? Because of the things I can hear and feel?" Rose pulled him onto her lap, holding him close. "Oh, sweetheart, you're not weird. You're special in a way that most people can't understand. But being special can be lonely sometimes, can't it?" Milo nodded against her chest. "Sometimes I hear so many feelings from other people that I forget which ones are mine." "That's why we're going to learn together how to manage this gift you have," Rose said firmly. "Because it is a gift, even when it's overwhelming. You helped Luna today in a way that no one else could have." "Do you think the babies will be okay?" Milo asked. "I think they're going to be more than okay," Rose replied. "I think they're going to be miracles." But neither Rose nor Milo could have predicted just how miraculous those puppies would turn out to be, or how their birth would uncover the final piece of Luna's story, a piece that would reveal connections no one had imagined, and change the lives of everyone in Pine Valley forever. As they prepared for bed that night, Luna lay peacefully in her warm shelter, her heart finally at rest after months of desperate vigil. The babies moved actively inside her, as if they too could sense that everything was about to change for the better. But tomorrow would bring revelations that no one, not even Milo with his extraordinary gifts, could have foreseen. What do you think Marcus wanted to tell Luna that finally gave her peace? Share your thoughts below. Some of you might be closer to the truth than you realize. The call came at 3:17 in the morning, jolting Rose from a deep sleep. Dr. Williams's voice was tense with urgency when she answered her phone. "Mrs. Peterson, you need to get here now. Luna's in labor, but something's wrong. She keeps calling for someone, making sounds I've never heard from a dog before. She won't let me near her, and I think she's in distress." Rose was already reaching for her clothes before Dr. Williams finished speaking. "We'll be right there." She woke Milo gently, explaining the situation in whispered tones. Her grandson was instantly alert, his brown eyes wide with concern. "She's scared," he said simply, pulling on his jacket. "The babies are coming, but she doesn't remember how to be brave without Marcus." They hurried through the empty streets of Pine Valley, the October night crisp and clear above them. When they reached Dr. Williams's clinic, they could hear Luna's distressed whimpering from the parking lot. Inside the makeshift birthing area, Luna was pacing restlessly, her sides heaving with contractions. Dr. Williams stood helplessly nearby, his medical supplies laid out but unused. "She's been like this for an hour," he explained. "Labor started normally, but then she began making these sounds, almost like she's calling for help. Every time I try to approach, she backs away. I'm worried about the puppies." Milo walked slowly toward Luna, his movements calm and deliberate. "Hey, beautiful girl, I'm here. Grandma Rose is here too. You don't have to do this alone." Luna immediately moved toward him, pressing her head against his chest. Her whole body was trembling, but whether from pain or fear, it was impossible to tell. "What's she telling you?" Rose asked softly. Milo placed his hands gently on Luna's sides, his eyes closing in concentration. "She's afraid the babies won't survive because Marcus isn't here to protect them. She thinks something bad will happen if she can't keep them safe, the way he kept her safe." Dr. Williams watched in amazement as Luna's breathing began to slow under Milo's touch. "I've been a veterinarian for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this." "The first puppy is coming," Milo announced suddenly. "But Luna needs to know it's okay to let them be born. She needs to know they'll be safe in this world." What happened next defied every law of nature that Rose thought she understood. As Luna's labor progressed, Milo seemed to guide her through each contraction with whispered words and gentle touches. But more than that, he appeared to be narrating a conversation that only he could hear. "Marcus is here," Milo said softly. "He's telling Luna that each puppy is a piece of their love that gets to stay in the world. He's promising that he'll watch over them always, and that they'll have people who care about them." Luna's first puppy was born just as the sun began to rise, a tiny golden form that immediately began nursing with vigorous determination. Dr. Williams moved carefully to examine the newborn, his professional amazement evident.
"Perfect health," he murmured. "Strong heartbeat. Good reflexes. This little one is a fighter."
But even as Luna tended to her first puppy, her labor continued. Milo stayed beside her, one hand on her head and the other gently stroking her back.
"Two more coming," he said. "Luna's getting tired, but she's remembering how strong she is. Marcus is reminding her of all the times she helped him when he was scared."
The second puppy arrived an hour later, smaller than the first but equally healthy. This one had more white markings mixed with the golden fur, creating a pattern that looked almost like tiny wings across its shoulders. "That one's special," Milo observed, watching the puppy find its place beside its sibling. "It has a different kind of strength, the kind that helps heal broken hearts." Dr. Williams documented each birth with clinical precision, but Rose could see he was deeply moved by what he was witnessing. This wasn't just a medical procedure, it was something approaching the miraculous. The third puppy took longer to arrive, and when it finally emerged, Dr. Williams's expression grew concerned. The tiny form was completely still, showing no signs of life. "This one's not breathing," he said urgently, reaching for his resuscitation equipment, but Milo moved faster than anyone expected. He gently lifted the motionless puppy, cradling it in his small hands with infinite tenderness. "Come on, little one," he whispered. "Your mama needs you. Marcus is waiting to meet you. You're loved already. You just need to take your first breath and join the world." Rose watched in stunned silence as her grandson breathed softly on the puppy's tiny face, then rubbed its chest with one finger. For long moments, nothing happened. Dr. Williams prepared to intervene, but something about Milo's absolute certainty made him pause. "Please," Milo continued, his voice filled with a faith that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his 5 years. "You have so much love waiting for you. Don't be afraid." And then, like a miracle unfolding in slow motion, the tiny puppy gasped. Its chest began to rise and fall, and within moments it was crying with the strong, demanding voice of new life. Dr. Williams stared at Milo with something approaching awe. "How did you know to do that?" "Marcus told me," Milo replied simply, gently placing the revived puppy beside its mother. "He said sometimes souls need a little help remembering how to live." Luna immediately began cleaning her third puppy with fierce maternal intensity, as if trying to make up for those terrifying moments when life had hung in the balance. Her relief was palpable, her whole body relaxing as all 3 of her babies settled into nursing. 3 healthy puppies, Dr. Williams announced, though his voice carried a note of wonder that had nothing to do with medical science. "I've seen a lot of births, but this was something special." As the morning progressed, word of the miraculous birth spread through Pine Valley with the speed that only small-town news can achieve. People began gathering outside Dr. Williams's clinic, drawn by stories of the homeless man's dog who had refused to leave his grave, and the little boy who seemed to speak with spirits. Father Miguel arrived with breakfast for everyone, followed by several members of his congregation who had known Marcus during his lifetime. Margaret Chen from the Historical Society came with a folder full of documents she'd discovered about Marcus's service record and his struggles after returning from overseas. "I thought you might want to see this," Margaret told Rose, opening the folder to reveal military photographs and commendation letters. Marcus was a hero long before he became homeless. He saved 3 lives during his deployment, and he was decorated for courage under fire. Rose studied the photographs of a young, smiling Marcus in uniform, trying to reconcile this image with the broken man who had died alone in a cemetery. What happened to him? PTSD, survivor's guilt, and a system that failed him, Margaret replied sadly. He couldn't forgive himself for coming home when his friends didn't. The drinking started as a way to cope, and everything spiraled from there. But he had Luna, Milo observed, looking up from where he sat beside the new family. She helped him remember how to love something. Yes, Margaret agreed. According to the people at the soup kitchen, Luna appeared in his life right when he needed her most. Some said she saved him from doing something desperate. Dr. Williams approached the group with a concerned expression. We need to discuss Luna's long-term care. She and the puppies need a permanent home, and she's formed such a strong bond with Milo that separating them might be traumatic for both of them. Rose looked at her grandson, who was gently stroking Luna's head while the puppies nursed contentedly. The connection between them was undeniable, not just affection, but something deeper and more essential. "What are you thinking, Grandma Rose?" Milo asked, somehow sensing her internal debate. "I'm thinking," Rose said slowly, "that our house is about to get a lot more crowded." The joy on Milo's face was radiant. "Really? We can keep them?" "All of them," Rose confirmed. "At least until the puppies are old enough to find homes of their own. And Luna belongs with us now." The crowd outside the clinic erupted in spontaneous applause when Dr. Williams announced Rose's decision. But their celebration was interrupted by an unexpected arrival. A sleek black car pulled up to the clinic, and a well-dressed woman in her 50s stepped out. She walked purposefully toward the gathering, her expression mixing curiosity with something that looked almost like recognition. "Excuse me," she said, addressing Dr. Williams. "I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez from the university's veterinary research program. I heard about what happened here this morning, and I need to see this dog." Dr. Williams frowned. "Ma'am, Luna and her puppies need rest. They've been through quite an ordeal." "You don't understand," Dr. Martinez insisted. "I've been searching for this dog for over a year. If this is who I think it is, she's not just any stray. She's worth more than you can imagine." A protective silence fell over the crowd. Rose stepped forward, her grandmother instincts immediately on high alert. "What exactly are you saying?" Rose asked carefully. Dr. Martinez opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder filled with official-looking documents. "This dog is from a very specific bloodline. Champion show dogs worth tens of thousands of dollars each. She was stolen from a breeding facility in the next county 18 months ago, along with several other valuable animals." "That's impossible," Father Miguel interjected. "Luna belonged to Marcus Chen. She was his companion for years." "I'm afraid not," Dr. Martinez continued, though her voice was gentler now. "According to our records, this dog's registered name is Golden Sunrise Luna's Promise. She was pregnant when she was stolen, and we believe whoever took her sold her to someone who couldn't control her. She's been missing ever since." The crowd began murmuring angrily, but Milo's voice cut through the noise with startling clarity. "You're wrong," he said, standing up to face Dr. Martinez. "Luna chose Marcus. She wasn't stolen. She was escaping." Dr. Martinez looked down at the small boy with mild condescension. "Son, dogs don't escape. They don't make conscious choices like that." "Luna did," Milo insisted, his brown eyes blazing with conviction. "She was trapped in a place where they only cared about making money from her babies. She was treated like a machine instead of like someone who could love and be loved. So she ran away, and she found Marcus because he needed her as much as she needed him." "That's quite an imagination you have," Dr. Martinez said dismissively, "but the legal facts are clear. This dog is valuable property, and she needs to be returned to her rightful owners." Luna, who had been calmly nursing her puppies throughout this exchange, suddenly lifted her head and looked directly at Dr. Martinez. The sound she made was unlike any noise anyone had heard from her before, a low, rumbling growl that carried undertones of absolute rejection. "She remembers you," Milo said quietly. "Not you specifically, but people like you. People who think love can be bought and sold." Dr. Martinez stepped back involuntarily as Luna rose to her feet, placing herself protectively between her puppies and the stranger. The dog's entire demeanor had changed from peaceful contentment to fierce maternal determination. "This is ridiculous," Dr. Martinez said, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "I have legal documentation proving ownership. And I have a 5-year-old boy who brought a dying puppy back to life with nothing but love and faith," Rose countered. "Some things matter more than legal documentation." The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by the arrival of yet another unexpected visitor. Officer Martinez, no relation to Dr. Martinez, appeared with a folder of his own, his expression grimly satisfied. "Dr. Martinez," he said formally, "I'm going to have to ask you to step away from that dog." "I beg your pardon?" Dr. Martinez replied, clearly flustered. "We received an anonymous tip this morning about illegal breeding operations and animal theft," Officer Martinez explained. "When we investigated the facility you represent, we found evidence of serious animal abuse and fraud. The dogs weren't champion bloodlines. They were puppy mill animals with forged papers. The whole operation was a scam designed to defraud buyers." Dr. Martinez's face went pale. "That's impossible. I've worked with that facility for 2 years, according to our records," Officer Martinez continued. 2 years of helping them sell sick, abused animals as premium breeding stock. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and animal abuse." As Dr. Martinez was led away in handcuffs, the crowd around the clinic erupted in cheers. But Luna paid no attention to the human drama. She had already settled back down with her puppies, content in the knowledge that the threat had passed. "How did Officer Martinez know to investigate that facility?" Rose asked Father Miguel quietly. The priest smiled mysteriously. "Sometimes information comes from the most unexpected sources. Let's just say that certain spirits have been very busy making phone calls this morning." Rose looked at her grandson, who was once again sitting peacefully beside Luna and her babies. Milo caught her gaze and smiled, with the kind of innocence that only deepened the mystery of his extraordinary gifts. "Marcus wanted to make sure Luna's babies would never have to live in a place like that," Milo explained simply. "So, he asked some friends for help." Dr. Williams shook his head in amazement. "I don't pretend to understand what's happening here, but I know a miracle when I see one. These puppies are healthy, Luna is safe, and somehow, justice has been served all at the same time." As the day wore on, the crowd gradually dispersed, but not before many people had contributed to an impromptu fund to help with Luna's care. By evening, Rose found herself with not only 4 new family members, but also enough money to build a proper fence around her backyard and stock up on the supplies that puppies would need. That night, as they prepared to bring Luna and her babies home for the first time, Milo asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Grandma Rose, do you think Marcus knew this would happen? That Luna would have her babies safely and find a new family?" Rose considered the question seriously. "I think Marcus knew that love has a way of creating its own miracles, and I think he trusted that the people who were meant to care for Luna would find her when the time was right." "So, we were always supposed to be Luna's new family?" "I think so, sweetheart. Sometimes the most important things in life come to us not because we're looking for them, but because we're ready to love them." As they loaded Luna and her 3 puppies into Rose's car for the journey to their new home, none of them could have predicted the final revelation that awaited them. Luna's story was far from over, and the deepest connection of all was about to be revealed in a way that would forever change how they understood the mysterious bonds that tie souls together across time and space. The 3 tiny puppies slept peacefully in their carrier, unaware that they carried within them secrets that would soon unlock the final piece of their mother's extraordinary journey. But what none of them knew yet was that Luna's connection to their family ran deeper than anyone had imagined, a connection that would finally explain why Milo had been able to hear her heart from the very beginning. Could Luna's arrival in their lives be more than just coincidence? Drop a comment if you think there's still one more secret waiting to be revealed. 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of puppy care, sleepless nights, and unexpected joy. Rose's small blue house had been transformed into a nursery of sorts, with blankets and toys scattered across every surface. Luna had adapted to domestic life with surprising ease, though she still insisted on sleeping beside Milo's bed, as if guarding him while he slept. The 3 puppies were thriving beyond Dr. Williams's most optimistic predictions. The firstborn, whom Milo had named Hope, was already showing signs of Luna's gentle intelligence. The second, called Brave for the white wing-like markings on his shoulders, displayed an uncanny ability to comfort anyone who seemed sad. But it was the third puppy, the one Milo had brought back to life, that captured everyone's attention. Milo had named her Grace, and from her first days of life, she seemed to possess an otherworldly awareness. She would stare at empty corners of rooms as if seeing things invisible to everyone else, and she had an unsettling habit of appearing wherever she was needed most, despite being barely old enough to walk properly. It was Grace who first led them to the discovery that would change everything. On a crisp November morning, while Rose was preparing breakfast and Luna was dozing in a patch of sunlight, Grace wandered away from her brothers and began pawing at something under the living room couch. Her persistent whimpering drew Milo's attention. What did you find, little one? Milo asked, getting down on his hands and knees to investigate. What he pulled out from under the furniture made his breath catch in his throat. It was a small, leather-bound journal, worn smooth by years of handling. The cover was embossed with the initials AP in faded gold lettering. "Grandma Rose!" Milo called, his voice strange with excitement and confusion. "You need to see this." Rose wiped her hands on her apron and joined Milo in the living room. When she saw the journal in his hands, she sank down hard on the couch, her face going pale. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "Grace led me to it. It was under the couch, but I don't understand how it got there. These are Mom's initials, aren't they? AP for Anna Peterson." Rose nodded slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "That's your mother's journal. She started writing in it when she was 12 years old. She kept it until—" Rose's voice trailed off. "Until she died," Milo finished gently. "But Grandma Rose, I've looked under that couch 100 times playing with my toys. This journal was never there before. Grace found it for a reason." Rose reached out with trembling hands to touch the familiar leather cover. "I kept all of your mother's things in boxes in the attic. I couldn't bear to look through them, but I couldn't throw them away either. I have no idea how this ended up down here." Luna, who had been watching the exchange with growing attention, rose and walked over to sniff the journal. The moment her nose touched the leather, she made a soft sound of recognition, the same gentle whimper she'd made when greeting Marcus's spirit in the cemetery. "She knows this smell," Milo observed, watching Luna's behavior carefully. "But how could she know Mom's journal?" "Maybe," Rose said quietly, "we should read it and find out." They settled together on the couch, Luna lying at their feet while the 3 puppies tumbled around nearby. Rose opened the journal with reverent care, her fingers tracing her daughter's familiar handwriting on the first page. "My name is Anna Peterson. I am 12 years old, and I am starting this journal because Mom says writing down your thoughts helps you understand them better," Rose read aloud, her voice catching on the words. They read through entries about school friends, first crushes, family vacations, and the ordinary joys and sorrows of a girl growing up in Pine Valley. But as Anna's entries progressed through her teenage years, a recurring theme began to emerge. "Listen to this," Rose said, finding an entry from Anna's 16th birthday. "I had the strangest dream again last night. I was in the old cemetery, sitting by a grave I didn't recognize. There was a golden dog there, the most beautiful dog I've ever seen. She was sad, so incredibly sad. But when she looked at me, I felt like she was trying to tell me something important. I woke up feeling like I'd made a promise to someone, but I can't remember what it was." Milo leaned closer, his brown eyes wide with growing understanding. Mom dreamed about Luna, but that was years before Luna even existed. Rose turned the pages with increasing urgency, finding more and more references to dreams about the golden dog in the cemetery. Anna had been dreaming about Luna for years before she'd ever met Milo's father, years before she'd become pregnant, years before her fatal car accident. "The dream is getting stronger," Rose read from an entry dated just 3 months before Anna's death. "The golden dog needs help, but not yet. She needs someone who will understand her sadness, someone who can hear what she's really saying. I keep feeling like this is connected to my future somehow, to something important that hasn't happened yet." Luna had risen to her feet during the reading, her attention fixed on the journal with an intensity that made Rose's skin prickle. The dog approached slowly, almost reverently, and placed her head on the open pages. "She remembers," Milo said softly. "Somehow, she remembers Mom." Rose turned to the very last entry in the journal, dated just 1 week before Anna's accident. Her voice barely a whisper, she read her daughter's final written words. "I had the most vivid dream last night. I was in the cemetery again. But this time, the golden dog wasn't alone. There was a little boy with her, a boy with dark hair and brown eyes who looked exactly like the baby I'm carrying. The dog and the boy were taking care of each other, helping each other heal from something terrible. I woke up knowing that somehow, someday, this will all make sense. If anything ever happens to me, I hope someone will remember that love doesn't end when people die. It just finds new ways to keep growing." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the soft sounds of the puppies playing and Luna's gentle breathing. Rose closed the journal with trembling hands, her mind struggling to process the impossible connections that Anna's words had revealed. "Mom knew," Milo said finally, his voice filled with wonder. "She knew about Luna, and she knew about me helping her. She saw it all in her dreams. But how is that possible? Rose asked, though even as she spoke the words, she realized she no longer questioned the impossible. After everything they'd witnessed with Milo's abilities and Luna's story, the boundaries between the possible and the miraculous had become meaningless. Maybe, Milo said thoughtfully, some connections are so strong they exist before they even happen. Maybe Mom and Luna were always supposed to find each other, even if it had to happen through me. Luna made that soft sound of agreement again, then did something extraordinary. She walked over to where Grace was playing with a toy and gently carried the tiny puppy over to Milo. Grace settled immediately in his lap, her small body warm and content. Grace is the connection, Milo said with sudden clarity. She's the one who found the journal. She's the one who sees things the rest of us can't. She's like a bridge between Mom and Luna and us. Rose watched her grandson cradle the tiny puppy, seeing in his gentle movements an echo of his mother's own nurturing nature. The resemblance between Anna and Milo had always been strong, but now it seemed to carry deeper significance. "What do you think this means for us?" Rose asked. "For our family?" "I think it means we were always meant to be together," Milo replied. "Luna lost Marcus, but she found us. Mom couldn't stay with us, but she made sure we'd find Luna when she needed us most. And now, Grace will help other people who are sad, just like Luna helped Marcus, and just like we helped Luna." As if understanding every word, Luna approached Rose and very gently placed her head in the older woman's lap. It was the first time the dog had sought comfort from anyone other than Milo, and the gesture felt like acceptance, not just of Rose as a caregiver, but as family. "I think," Rose said, stroking Luna's golden fur, "that your mother is still taking care of us, even from wherever she is now." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Rose opened it to find Father Miguel standing on the porch, his expression a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Mrs. Peterson, I hope I'm not intruding, but I have some news that I think you need to hear." "Of course, Father. Please, come in." Father Miguel entered the living room and stopped short when he saw Luna and her puppies. "My goodness, they've grown so much. They're beautiful." "What brings you by?" Rose asked, settling back on the couch beside Milo. "It's about Marcus," Father Miguel said, his voice careful. "I've been doing some research into his background, trying to understand more about his life before he became homeless. What I found is, well, it's remarkable." He pulled out a folder of documents and photographs, spreading them on Rose's coffee table. Marcus wasn't just a veteran. Before his deployment, he worked as a service dog trainer for therapy animals. He specialized in dogs that helped children with trauma and emotional difficulties. Milo leaned forward, studying the photographs of a younger, healthier Marcus surrounded by dogs and smiling children. "He helped kids like me?" "Exactly like you," Father Miguel confirmed. According to his former colleagues, Marcus had an almost supernatural ability to match the right dog with the right child. They said he could sense emotional needs that weren't obvious to other people. Rose felt her breath catch. "And Luna?" According to these records, Luna was his most successful training partner. They worked together for 3 years before his deployment, helping dozens of children overcome trauma, grief, and emotional challenges. The program had a nearly perfect success rate. "So, when Luna found Marcus on the streets," Milo said slowly, "she was trying to take care of him the same way they used to take care of other people together." "It appears so," Father Miguel nodded. "But there's more. I spoke with Dr. Williams this morning about Luna's behavior and her extraordinary bond with you, Milo. He believes she's retained all of her therapy training. She's still a service dog. She's just been serving Marcus all this time, and now she's serving you." Luna looked up at the mention of her name, her intelligent eyes moving between Father Miguel and Milo, as if following the conversation. "What does that mean for us?" Rose asked. "It means," Father Miguel said with a smile, "that Luna isn't just a pet who happened to find your family. She's a trained therapy animal who was guided to exactly where she needed to be. Grace, with her unusual behaviors and awareness, appears to be inheriting her mother's abilities. And Milo?" "What about Milo?" Rose prompted when the priest hesitated. "Milo has been displaying the same intuitive understanding of emotional needs that Marcus had, the same ability to communicate with animals on a level that goes beyond normal human-animal bonds. I think what we're witnessing is the continuation of Marcus and Luna's work, passed down through spiritual connection to the next generation. The implications of Father Miguel's words settled over them like a warm blanket. Everything that had seemed random or miraculous suddenly revealed itself as part of a larger pattern, a continuation of healing work that transcended individual lives. So, Mom's dreams weren't just dreams, Milo said. They were preparation. She was getting ready to make sure Luna's story could continue, even if she couldn't be here to see it herself. Your mother was always sensitive to things others couldn't see, Rose said softly. Even as a child, she seemed to know things before they happened. I think she passed that gift on to you, and now it's connecting with Luna's training to create something new. Father Miguel gathered his documents, but before leaving, he had one more revelation to share. There's something else. I contacted the children's hospital in the county seat. They have been looking for a therapy dog program for their pediatric ward, specifically for children dealing with grief and trauma. If Luna is willing, and if your family agrees, she could continue her calling in an official capacity. The idea felt both overwhelming and perfectly natural. Luna had always been meant to help heal broken hearts. Now she would have the opportunity to do so, not just for their family, but for children throughout their community. What do you think, Luna? Milo asked, looking into the dog's intelligent eyes. Do you want to help other kids who are sad like we were? Luna's response was immediate and unmistakable. Her tail began wagging with an enthusiasm they hadn't seen since her reunion with Marcus's spirit in the cemetery. She approached each of the puppies in turn, as if introducing them to the idea of their future calling. I think that's a yes, Rose laughed, wiping tears from her eyes. As Father Miguel prepared to leave, he paused in the doorway. There's one more thing you should know. The cemetery board met yesterday to discuss Marcus's grave. They have decided to create a memorial garden around it, with a plaque honoring both Marcus and Luna's service to the community. They want to call it the Garden of Faithful Hearts. After Father Miguel left, the house fell into a comfortable quiet. Luna settled beside the couch with her puppies, while Milo curled up next to Rose with Anna's journal still open in his lap. Grandma Rose, Milo said sleepily, do you think people can choose their families even before they're born? I think, Rose replied, stroking his hair, that the most important families are the ones that choose each other, over and over again, no matter what obstacles stand in their way. Outside, the November sky was beginning to show the first hints of winter, but inside Rose's house, warmth and hope filled every corner. Luna's journey from heartbreak to healing was nearing its completion, but the legacy of love she carried would continue growing for generations to come. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to heal, but tonight they were simply a family, brought together by loss, sustained by love, and dedicated to helping others find their way through the darkness into the light. Grace stirred in her sleep, her tiny paws moving, as if she were already walking toward the children, who would need her in the years to come. But there was still one final piece of Luna's story that none of them had discovered yet, a connection that would reveal the true scope of the miracle they had all been part of. What other connections do you think Anna foresaw in her dreams that haven't been revealed yet? The biggest surprise is still coming. 6 months later, on a warm spring morning that painted Pine Valley in shades of gold and green, Rose stood in her backyard watching Milo play with Luna and her now-grown puppies. Hope and Brave had found loving homes with families who understood their special nature, but Grace had stayed, her mysterious abilities growing stronger each day. The therapy program at the children's hospital had exceeded everyone's expectations. Luna's gentle presence and intuitive understanding had helped dozens of young patients work through trauma, grief, and fear. But it was Grace who had surprised everyone the most, displaying an almost supernatural ability to comfort children who seemed beyond reach. Rose was lost in these peaceful thoughts when her cell phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Williams's number, but his voice carried an urgency that immediately put her on alert. Mrs. Peterson, I need you to bring Milo and Luna to the hospital immediately. We have a situation that, well, I think you need to see this for yourself. 20 minutes later, they were walking through the sterile corridors of Pine Valley General Hospital, following Dr. Williams toward the pediatric wing. Luna walked beside them with the confident bearing of a working therapy dog, while Grace trotted along on her small leash, her ears perked forward with unusual attention. What's this about? Rose asked as they approached the children's ward. We admitted a little girl yesterday, Dr. Williams explained, his voice heavy with concern. Car accident. Same as your daughter's situation. She's physically stable, but she hasn't spoken a word since the crash. Won't eat, won't respond to staff, won't even acknowledge her grandmother, who's the only family she has left. Rose felt her stomach clench with familiar pain. How old is she?
4 years old. Her name is Sophie Chen.
Rose stopped walking so abruptly that Milo bumped into her. Chen? Is she? Margaret Chen's granddaughter, Dr. Williams confirmed. And here's the part that will shock you. She was in the car with her parents when they were coming to visit Marcus's grave. The little girl insisted on bringing flowers to the nice man with the dog that her grandmother had told her about. The implications hit Rose like a physical blow. This child had been on her way to honor Marcus and Luna's memory when tragedy struck, leaving her orphaned and traumatized just as Luna had been. Where is she now? Milo asked, his young voice already carrying the weight of understanding. Room 314, Dr. Williams replied. Margaret is with her, but the child won't even look at her grandmother. The psychiatrists think she's in severe shock, possibly selective mutism from trauma. They walked to room 314 in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the cruel patterns that seemed to repeat through generations. But when they reached the doorway, what they saw inside made all of them stop breathing. Sophie Chen was a tiny figure in the hospital bed, dark hair spread across the pillow, brown eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. She was beautiful and broken, exactly as Milo had been after his mother's death. But it wasn't Sophie who captured their attention. It was what lay on the bed beside her. A single golden flower, wilted and brown, clutched in her small fist. The same type of flower that grew wild in the cemetery around Marcus's grave. She won't let go of it, Margaret Chen said softly, rising from the chair beside the bed. Her eyes were red from crying, her face etched with the kind of grief that ages people overnight. She picked it at the cemetery just before the accident. She kept saying it was for the dog who missed her friend. Luna had moved to the foot of Sophie's bed without anyone noticing, her golden head tilted as she studied the unresponsive child. But it was Grace who acted first, somehow slipping free of her leash and jumping onto the bed with the agility that had amazed everyone since her birth. Grace, no, Rose started to say, but Dr. Williams held up a hand to stop her. The tiny puppy approached Sophie with infinite gentleness, settling beside the little girl's motionless form. She didn't try to play or demand attention. She simply placed her small body against Sophie's side and began the soft, rhythmic breathing that therapy animals are trained to use for calming. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, Sophie's rigid posture began to relax. Her fingers loosened around the wilted flower, and her breathing synchronized with Grace's gentle rhythm. Luna moved closer to the bed, her intelligent eyes fixed on Sophie's face. She made the softest possible sound, barely more than a breath, but it carried all the gentle patience she had learned during her months of grief. Sophie's eyes moved for the first time since the accident, turning to look at Luna with the faintest spark of recognition. "Dog," she whispered, the word barely audible but unmistakably clear. Margaret Chen gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. It was the first word Sophie had spoken since the crash. "Yes, sweetheart," Milo said gently, moving to stand beside Luna. "This is Luna. She's the dog who loved Marcus, the man you brought flowers for." Sophie's eyes widened slightly, and she struggled to sit up in the hospital bed. Grace adjusted her position to provide support, while Luna moved closer to the bed rail. "Marcus?" Sophie whispered. "The sad man in the ground?" "He's not sad anymore," Milo replied, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had learned that grief could transform into something beautiful. Luna helped him remember that love doesn't end when people go to heaven, and now Luna wants to help you remember that too. Sophie looked from Milo to Luna to the tiny puppy who had somehow known exactly where she needed to be. "My mommy and daddy went to heaven too." "Yes, they did," Milo said simply. "And it hurts really, really bad. But the love doesn't go away. It just gets different." "How do you know?" Sophie asked. And for the first time since the accident, there was a hint of curiosity in her voice rather than just pain. "Because my mommy went to heaven too, and Luna taught me that loving someone doesn't have to hurt all the time. Sometimes it can make you feel happy when you remember all the good things." Sophie reached out tentatively to touch Luna's golden fur. The dog stood perfectly still, allowing the connection to form naturally. "She's warm." "She's full of love," Milo explained.
love from Marcus, and love from my mom, and love from all the people who care about her. And now she has love for you too. What happened next would be talked about in Pine Valley for years to come. Sophie, who had been completely unresponsive for days, slowly swung her legs over the side of the hospital bed and reached for Luna. The dog immediately understood, lowering her head so the little girl could wrap her arms around the golden neck. They stayed like that for several minutes, the traumatized child and the dog who understood loss better than anyone. Grace remained close, her tiny presence providing additional comfort and stability. "I miss them so much," Sophie whispered into Luna's fur. "I know," Milo replied, moving to sit beside them. Luna missed Marcus so much she thought she might die from missing him. But then she remembered that he would want her to be happy, and she learned how to carry his love in a way that didn't hurt so much. "Can you teach me how to do that?" Sophie asked, looking up at Milo with eyes that held the first glimpse of hope anyone had seen since the accident. "We can teach each other," Milo said. "That's what families do." The word families hung in the air with profound significance. Margaret Chen looked at Rose with an expression of desperate hope, while Dr. Williams and the nursing staff watched in amazement as a seemingly unreachable child began to emerge from her shell of trauma. "Sophie," Margaret said gently, "would you like Luna and Milo to visit you every day while you're getting better?" Sophie nodded eagerly, the first enthusiastic response she'd shown to anything since the accident. "Can Grace stay too? She makes the scared feelings smaller." "Grace can stay as long as you need her to," Rose said, making a decision that felt as natural as breathing. "And when you're ready to leave the hospital, you can come visit Luna at our house anytime you want." "Really?" Sophie's voice carried the first hint of joy anyone had heard from her. "Really," Rose confirmed. "We have a big backyard where Luna likes to play, and we make really good sandwiches." Over the following weeks, Sophie's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The daily visits from Luna, Grace, and Milo became the highlight of her rehabilitation. She began eating regularly, participating in physical therapy, and slowly opening up about her memories of her parents. But it was during one of these visits that the final, most stunning revelation of Luna's story came to light. Sophie was sitting on the floor of her hospital room, gently brushing Luna's fur while Grace supervised from nearby. Milo was showing her pictures of hope and Brave in their new homes when Sophie suddenly looked up with a puzzled expression. "Milo," she said carefully, "Luna keeps showing me pictures in my head, pictures of a lady with dark hair who looks like you." Rose, who had been reading nearby, looked up sharply. "What kind of pictures, sweetheart?" "The lady is in a car, and she's thinking about a little boy and a golden dog. She's worried about something, but she's also happy because she knows the boy and the dog will take care of each other." Milo's eyes widened. "What else does the lady look like?" Sophie closed her eyes, concentrating. "She has kind eyes like yours, and she's holding something." Sophie's eyes snapped open. "She's holding flowers, the same kind I picked for Marcus." Rose felt the world tilt around her. "Sophie, where was the lady when you saw her?" "In a car, driving toward the cemetery. But it was a long time ago, before I was born. Luna remembers her because..." Sophie paused, her young face scrunched in concentration. "Because the lady stopped to help Luna when she was lost and scared." The silence in the room was deafening. Dr. Williams, who had been checking Sophie's chart, slowly set down his clipboard. Margaret Chen reached for Rose's hand, both women understanding the implications of what Sophie had just revealed. "My mother helped Luna," Milo whispered. "Before Luna ever met Marcus, Mom found her and helped her." "That's why Luna recognized the journal," Rose said, her voice filled with wonder. "That's why she knew your scent, why she connected with you so immediately. Anna saved her life years before you were ever born." Luna, as if understanding every word of the conversation, walked over to Rose and placed her head in the older woman's lap. The same gesture of gratitude and recognition she had shown when Rose first offered to help her in the cemetery. "The dreams weren't just dreams," Rose continued, tears streaming down her face. "Anna was remembering something that had already happened. She had already met Luna, already saved her, already set in motion everything that followed." Sophie looked around at the crying adults with the pragmatic confusion of childhood. "So, Luna came to find Milo because his mommy was nice to her? That makes sense. When people are kind to you, you remember them forever." Out of the mouths of babes came the simplest and most profound truth of all. Kindness creates connections that transcend time, space, and even death itself. Margaret Chen wiped her eyes and looked at Rose with the expression of deep gratitude. I think Anna saved more than just Luna that day. She saved all of us, Sophie, you, Milo, me. She set in motion a chain of love that's still healing broken hearts. Dr. Williams cleared his throat, clearly moved by what he had witnessed. I've been a doctor for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what I've watched unfold over these past months. This isn't just about a dog finding a family, or even about therapy animals helping children heal. This is about something much bigger, about how love creates connections that can span generations. Sophie, who had been listening with the serious attention that children give to important adult conversations, suddenly smiled, the first full, genuine smile anyone had seen from her since the accident. I think, she said with the wisdom that often emerges from great loss, that heaven must be really close to here if the people we love can still help us, even when they're gone. 6 months later, Pine Valley celebrated the grand opening of the Marcus Chen Memorial Garden in the cemetery, complete with a bronze statue of a man and his faithful dog surrounded by flowers that bloomed year-round. The Garden of Faithful Hearts had become a place of pilgrimage for people dealing with loss, and Luna's therapy work had expanded to include regular visits to nursing homes, schools, and anywhere broken hearts needed healing. Sophie had moved in with her grandmother Margaret, but spent most afternoons at Rose's house, where she and Milo had become inseparable friends, bonded by shared loss and the miraculous discovery of chosen family. Grace had grown into a remarkable therapy dog in her own right, displaying abilities that amazed even the most experienced animal behaviorists. But perhaps the most beautiful development was the way Luna had finally found peace with her past while embracing her future. She still visited Marcus's grave regularly, but now she brought others with her. Children who needed to understand that love doesn't end with death, adults who had forgotten how to hope, and anyone who needed to be reminded that faithful hearts are never truly alone. On quiet evenings, when the work was done and the house was peaceful, Rose would find Milo and Sophie reading together, with Luna and Grace stretched out beside them. In those moments, she could feel Anna's presence as clearly as if her daughter were sitting right there with them, smiling at the beautiful family that love had created across impossible circumstances.
The final entry in Anna's journal had been prophetic in ways no one could have imagined. Love doesn't end when people die. It just finds new ways to keep growing.
Luna's story had become proof that some connections are so powerful they can survive anything, even death itself. And in a small blue house in Pine Valley, surrounded by the laughter of children and the gentle breathing of faithful dogs, that love continued to grow every single day. The most incredible part of this true story, Luna is still alive today, still working as a therapy dog, and still proving every day that love truly knows no boundaries. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment where you're listening from, and subscribe for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in the power of love. Have you ever experienced a connection that seemed too perfect to be coincidence? Share your story in the comments below. You never know whose heart you might heal with your words.